In this WBT, we are going to go over the new Evaluation and Management Guidelines for 2021. As you may or may not know, the AMA proposed significant new changes to CMS, which have been approved and will go into effect January 1st, 2021. Before we get started, let's discuss why a change is being made. If you've been in healthcare for a decent amount of time, you're aware of the term physician burnout in regards to documentation. The time it takes to document the visit, know which service was provided, and what elements need to be captured to reflect and achieve accurate reimbursement for treatment provided is daunting. The proposed changes allow physicians to focus on patient care rather than performing unnecessary and/or irrelevant elements. Greater clarity in the guidelines will be described. Recognize the importance of non-face-to-face activities. More accurate coding reimbursement based on the clinical scenario in regards to medical decision-making or time, lower audit risk, improved patient care with a reduction in time spent documenting. So let's talk about what's changing. Evaluation and Management Guidelines for CPT codes 99202 through 99215. This is for outpatient, new, and established patients only. New patient code 99201 will be deleted. History and exam requirements will change, which we will go over in a minute. Medical decision-making and time-based billing. Prolonged care guidelines are also changing with the addition of one new code, which we will talk about shortly. Unfortunately, the new changes will not take place across the board. At this time, the guidelines for outpatient consultations will remain the same, as will those for ED visits and all inpatient E&M services. The guidelines for medical necessity have not changed and will continue to play a role in documentation. Let's talk about the history and examination. No longer are the history and exam key components for selecting the level of a new or established patient. Gone are the days where a complete history has to be documented to determine the level, and a complete review of systems as well. It is now up to the clinician to determine the nature and extent of the history and the physical exam. We must keep in mind that the exam and the history must be medically appropriate and cannot be omitted completely. This helps to substantiate medical necessity. Your voices have been heard. Selecting the level of E&M services is now going to be based solely on medical decision-making or total time of the visit. Documentation is going to be extremely important. Even though we do not have to have all of those specific elements in the history and exam, the new NDM guidelines are going to require you to be specific. Before we go over the guideline changes for medical decision-making, let's talk about the changes being made for time-based billing. Keep in mind the revision is only for codes 99202 through 99215. All other time-based guidelines remain the same. 99202 through 99215 can now be selected based on time, whether or not counseling and coordination of care dominate the visit. What this means is no longer will we need to use the statement of greater than 50% in counseling. This is going to include face-to-face time and non-face-to-face time. We will also need to keep in mind that this is practitioner time only. Staff time is not included. The AMA states that a physician and an APP can combine their time in face-to-face and non-face-to-face activities when both are seeing the patient on the same day. This is fairly new to us as we are used to Incident to and Split Shared guidelines. If the physician and the APP see the patient together, they cannot double count their time. At this time, we are unsure if Medicare is going to follow this rule, and we're also unsure if the payers are going to require a specific breakdown in documentation based on time. Meaning, will the APP need to document their time and what was done, and the MD do the same thing? We're not sure yet. Currently, there are no changes being made to the teaching physician rules to include resident time without the teaching physician present. Right now, we are unsure how this will pertain to the primary care exception rule and resident-only clinics. We will be on the lookout for further guidance, and we'll get that information out as soon as possible. Now let's talk about what can be included towards time. Preparing to see the patient. This could be reviewing test results, previous documentation, obtaining and or reviewing separately obtained history, performing a medically appropriate exam or evaluation, counseling and educating the patient, family, and or caregiver, and ordering medication, tests, or procedures. Other areas that count towards time: referring and communicating with other healthcare professionals when not separately reported, documenting clinical information in the electronic health record. Keep in mind this must be done the same day as the visit. Independently interpreting results not separately reportable, and communicating results to the patient, family, and or caregiver. Care coordination, if not separately reportable, is counted towards time as well. When calculating your time, make sure not to double dip. The time spent providing services that are separately reportable cannot count towards E&M time. This includes any procedures that take place in the office, interpretation of test results. However, if the physician is billing for the professional component of the diagnostic test, time interpreting results cannot be counted towards the E&M office visit. Let's take a look at the changes to the time thresholds for our new patient and established patient codes. On the left, you will see the new patient codes listed with the time attached. You will see 99202 requires 15 to 29 minutes, 99203 is 30 to 44, and so on. There is no halfway point required or a threshold of time that needs to be spent to meet these codes. They are captured by the minute. So if you spend 30 minutes on your new patient visit, you have a 99203. 45 minutes would be a 99204. Prolonged care, no longer are you able to use the non-face-to-face codes for 99202 and 99215. There is a new 15-minute code that has been created to use in conjunction with 99215 and 99205 when time-based. At this time, we do not know if there will be a threshold of time that is required to bill the additional 15-minute code. Now let's talk about the changes being made to medical decision-making. Are you ready to show the patient's severity of illness and risks related to the treatment plan? This is the time to do it. Medical decision-making will be determined by the following three elements: the number and complexity of problems that are addressed during the encounter, the amount and or complexity of data to be reviewed and analyzed, the risk of complications, morbidity, and or mortality of patient management decisions made at the visit associated with the patient's problems or treatment. Well, that sounds familiar, right? The three elements that make up medical decision-making have not changed. However, there are big modifications. So let's talk about a few of those. Removal of vague terminology such as mild, better defined concepts around clinical terms, chronic illness with severe exacerbation, progression or side effects of treatment, and drug therapy requiring intensive monitoring for toxicity. Redefine data elements to move away from simply adding up tasks to focus on tasks that affect the management of the patient. Independent interpretation of tests performed by another healthcare professional and or discussion of test interpretation with an external physician. Let's talk about some medical decision-making terms. Problem addressed or managed. To count towards MDM, the provider must evaluate or treat the problem. A simple notation that another service is managing the problem is not sufficient. Further workup or treatment that is decided against, maybe the patient is high risk and they decline services, counts towards addressed. Referral without evaluation or consideration of treatment does not count. Self-limited or minor problem. One that runs its course. It's typically short-lived and not likely to permanently alter the patient's health status. These are typically your colds, insect bites, or simple sprains. Risk refers to the probability and consequences of an event and is defined by the thought process of the physician treating the patient. Stating low, moderate, or high risk is still recommended documentation. This not only helps the coders understand the severity of the patient's illness, but it also helps the auditors reading your documentation to understand what's taking place. The assessment of the level of risk is affected by the nature of the event under consideration. External physician or qualified healthcare professional is someone who is not in the same group practice or is classified as a different specialty or subspecialty. External refers to your division and your specialty. An external physician can take place within the enterprise itself. Independent historian is a parent, guardian, surrogate, a spouse, or any other individual that provides patient history when the patient can't provide one for themselves. So if you are a physician that sees pediatric patients, pay attention here. Due to developmental stage, dementia, or psychosis. This specifically includes parents of pediatric patients who are unable to provide a history. Social determinants will now play a factor in professional billing. This includes economic and social conditions that influence health and/or treatment. You can find this under moderate complexity and may be defined as diagnosis or treatment significantly limited by social determinants of health. This could be due to housing insecurity or food and water insecurity. Morbidity refers to the state of illness or functional impairment that is expected to be of substantial duration, during which function is limited, quality of life is impaired, or there is organ damage that may be transient despite treatment. This could be having a disease or a symptom of a disease, or medical problems caused by treatment. We finally have a better defined definition of drug therapy requiring intensive monitoring for toxicity. This is something that takes place often, but is one of the top things missed within documentation when reviewing notes. A drug that requires intensive monitoring is a therapeutic agent that has the potential to cause serious morbidity or death. A few things to keep in mind here. Monitoring assesses adverse effects, not therapeutic efficacy. The type of monitoring used should be the generally accepted kind for that agent, although patient-specific monitoring may be appropriate as well. Long-term or short-term monitoring is acceptable. However, long-term monitoring occurs at least quarterly. Labs, imaging, and physiologic tests are possible monitoring methods. However, the history and exam are not. Monitoring affects the MDM level when the provider considers the monitoring as part of the patient's management. An example that would qualify: monitoring for cytopenia in the use of an anti-neoplastic agent between dose cycles for the short-term intensive monitoring of electrolytes and renal function in a patient who is undergoing diuresis. Example that would not qualify: monitoring glucose levels during insulin therapy as the primary reason is the therapeutic effect, even if hypoglycemia is a concern. The next couple slides break down some familiar terms. I won't read through each of them, but we'll touch on key takeaways. An acute uncomplicated illness or injury. This typically refers to a recent, short-term problem with little to no risk of mortality with treatment. This could be cystitis, allergic rhinitis, or a simple sprain. An acute illness with systemic symptoms. Typically, there is a high risk of morbidity without treatment. Examples here would be pyelonephritis, pneumonitis, or colitis. An acute complicated injury refers to an extensive injury with the possibility of multiple treatment options with risk of morbidity. This could be a head injury with brief loss of consciousness. Stable chronic illness, typically expected to last at least a year or until the patient's death. The patient's treatment goals determine whether the illness is stable. If the patient hasn't reached their goal, the condition is not considered stable. Examples here would be well-controlled hypertension or non-insulin dependent diabetes. A chronic illness with exacerbation, progression, or side effects of treatment. In this case, the illness is getting worse and is not well controlled. However, hospitalization is not required. Unfortunately, the AMA does not have examples at this time. A chronic illness with severe exacerbation, progression, or side effects of treatment. Note the difference with the term severe. This refers to a significant risk to morbidity that may require hospital care. Again, no examples as of yet. An acute or chronic illness or injury that poses a threat to life or bodily function. These patients typically are at a higher risk of loss of organ function without treatment. An acute MI, PE, or severe respiratory distress is an example. Now let's break down the medical decision-making table. Keep in mind our three elements of MDM are what you see listed in the middle row: our problems addressed, data, and risk. For new and established patients, level 2, the medical decision-making is considered straightforward. In this case, the problem is considered minimal and is self-limited or minor. No data required, and the overall risk is minimal. For new and established patients, level 3, the MDM is considered low. Note under our complexity of data, there is a new requirement that states each unique test, order, or document contributes to the combination of 2 or combination of 3 in category 1 below. For a level 3 patient, the problem is considered low. We have the option of 2 or more self-limited or minor problems, 1 stable chronic illness, or 1 acute uncomplicated illness or injury. For our data section, a level 3 is considered limited. In this category, we must meet the requirements of at least one of the 2 categories. Under category 1, titled Test and Documents, we can select from any combination of the 2. Review of prior external notes from each unique source, review of results of each unique test, or ordering of each unique test. Under category 2, an assessment requiring an independent historian, which we discussed earlier. Risk in this case is considered low. For new and established patients level 4, the medical decision-making is considered moderate. Under problems addressed, we have several areas to choose from. 1 or more chronic illnesses with exacerbation, progression, or side effects of treatment, or 2 or more stable chronic illnesses. 1 diagnosed new problem with uncertain prognosis, 1 acute illness with systemic symptoms, or 1 acute complicated injury. Our data here is considered moderate as well. In this case, we must meet the requirements of at least one of the 3 categories below. Under category 1, any combination of the 3 from the following: review of prior external notes from each unique source, review of results of each unique test, ordering of each unique test, or an assessment requiring an independent historian. Category 2, independent interpretation of a test performed by another physician or qualified healthcare professional not separately reported. Category 3, discussion of management of test interpretation with an external physician or qualified healthcare professional not separately reported. Our risk here is considered moderate as well. Prescription drug management, decision for minor surgery with identified risk factors, etc. Here is where our social determinants of health comes into play. If the treatment is significantly limited due to social determinants, we have moderate risk. For new and established patients level 5, the medical decision-making is considered high. This means the patient either has 1 or more chronic illnesses with severe exacerbation, progression, or side effects of treatment, or 1 acute or chronic illness or injury that poses a threat to life or bodily function. Our data section tells us that we must meet the requirements of at least 2 of the 3 categories below. For category 1 test and documents, any combination of the 3 from the following: review of prior external notes, review of results of each unique test, ordering of each unique test, and assessment requiring an independent historian. Category 2, independent interpretation of a test performed by another physician or qualified healthcare professional not separately reported. Category 3, discussion of management of test interpretation with an external physician or qualified healthcare professional not separately reported. For these patients, risk is considered high. They may require drug therapy with intensive monitoring for toxicity, or decision regarding elective major surgery with identified risk factors, decision for emergency major surgery, or the decision of DNR status due to poor prognosis. Now let's go over some case reviews together. For case 1, we have an established patient that presents for follow-up for cough. The HBI tells us this patient was previously seen 3 weeks ago with a runny nose, congestion, sore throat, and cough. Children's Tylenol has provided minimal relief, and the patient continues with symptoms with a new onset of fever. The provider documents a medically appropriate personal and social history and review of systems. Our exam is medically appropriate for the presenting problems and tell us that the patient has swollen turbinates, tonsils, and lymph nodes, as well as moderate redness of the throat. The provider deems it necessary to run a flu and strep test, which turns out positive for strep A. The patient is diagnosed with an upper respiratory infection, and the physician orders a chest x-ray. Penicillin is prescribed, and the physician states the office will follow up with imaging results. Previous MDM would score this as low based on 1, established problem worsening, 2 points for labs and data, and moderate risk for prescription drug management. In 2021, the medical decision-making here would be moderate based on an acute illness with systemic symptoms, 2 labs and 1 radiology ordered, and prescription drug management. In case 2, we have a new patient that presents for right knee pain. The provider documents a medically appropriate HPI, past family social history, and review of systems. In this case, the patient has had previous injuries to the same knee and describes the pain as consistent. However, over-the-counter meds are helping. The exam tells us the patient has pain with motion over the medial joint line and is observed with squats. No abrasions or lacerations are noted. The provider feels the patient may possibly have a medial meniscus tear and orders an MRI and advises the patient to continue motoring for pain. Previous MDM scores this service as a new patient level 4 based on a new problem with additional workup, radiology ordered, and a chronic injury with mild exacerbation. 2021 scores this as a new patient level 3 based on chronic injury with mild exacerbation, radiology ordered, and over-the-counter medication. Here you will see the CMS physician fee schedule for 2021. This slide is intended to show the comparison between work RVUs from previous years to changes in 2021. As you can see, other than 99202 and 99211, there will be an increase in work RVUs for all new and established patient outpatient services. The following slide shows the 2021 physician fee schedule with a conversion factor of $32.26. This is a $3.83 decrease from 2020 and is based on budget neutrality. An 11% reduction in the Medicare conversion factor is necessitated by proposed additional spending of $10.2 billion. The RUC recommendations for office visit payment increases account for only half of this additional spending and therefore half of the reduction. Here you will see the new and established patient codes with the 2021 work RVU and the national facility and non-facility payments. Now let's go over some key takeaways from today's presentation. Remember, changes for 2021 are for new and established patient visits outpatient only. All other services and guidelines remain the same. Time-based now includes all of the time you spent on the patient care that day. Social determinants of health increases complexity. Address it, document it, and take credit for it. Document only what is medically pertinent in the ROS and exam. And lastly, take a deep breath. You've got this. This concludes our session today. If you have any additional questions or concerns, please email Leah Burton at leah.burton@uky.edu. That's leah.burton@uky.edu.